Okay, so it's been a while since I've uploaded, but I'm back. Like nobody. Well, okay. I don't. I don't know what that was over there, but I don't know if she's saying either me, but I don't really care. So I'm basically just gonna be explaining the basics of, I guess, PCs. I don't know anymore. I haven't been busy. I'm gonna be truthful. I don't know what that is. It's stupid. I'll ship you with the. I don't even know what happened to this community. Alright, but anyways, like I was saying, why is my PC running loud? Let me see what's going on in here. So, what's using most of my memory? Chrome. Let me close that. Why is Roblox using so much of my CPU? Holy crap. And why is it using so much of my GPU? That's insane. Let me put my mic over here just so that you can't hear that. But, so basically, just gonna be explaining the basics of PC. I can't edit this out because I'm too stupid to do that, so I'm just gonna get straight to the point. Alright, so basically PCs are computers, obviously. It's what most people use nowadays to work, do schoolwork, play games, watch movies, stuff like that, you know. And there's maybe seven parts of a PC. I don't know, because there's the CPU, the motherboard, the CPU cooler, the graphics card, the RAM, the fans, the power supply, the storage. So there's about 7 or 8 parts in a computer. Oh, and the case. So maybe 8 or 8 or 9. But those are 8 key components that you'll need to build a PC. Now, you can't just go out and buy these and just say, "Oh, I'm going to build a PC randomly." You can't just build a PC without knowledge. That's not how that works. That's like going into 12th grade and saying, or being a 7th grader and going into 12th grade and saying, "I know all this stuff." Just happened. Okay, I don't know what that was. But it's basically just like that. So you can't just like, because obviously since you're a 7th grader, you don't know crap about 7th grade math or 12th grade math and like history and social studies and stuff like that. History and social studies are the exact same thing. But that's what I want to say. Gaslighter, manipulator, gamer. That's nice. Anyways, so those are the 8 to 9 key components that you'll need to build the PC, and it will take ranging. It depends if you're a starter and you're building your first ever build. It'll probably take like 4 hours, but if you're like someone who's experienced, it'll probably take you like 2 hours maybe if you're fast. But don't rush through it, because if you do, you might, like for example, you might break the pins off of RAM or bend the pins on your CPU and just ruin your entire build with one mistake. And that's obviously something that no one wants to do. So let's start with the motherboard. So the motherboard is what holds everything intact and gives, well, it's not what it gives it power to, that's the power supply. The motherboard is where you put your CPU, your GPU, your graphics card, and it's where you connect most of your things, such as your fans, your graphics card. Well, I mean, you connect your graphics card to like everything is connected to the power supply, but it's also connected to the motherboard. So it connects to both things. It's where you put your CPU, your RAM, your graphics card, connect your fans, your CPU cooler. It's basically where you put most of your components in, and that's where, I mean, if you don't have a motherboard, then I don't even know how your PC's gonna work. Now, there's cheap motherboards out there that are actually very great, but I'll talk about PC prices in another video. But so that's the motherboard through with. I'm trying to get this lower than 10 minutes. So the next part is a CPU. So a CPU is I think it stands for a computer processing unit, something like that. I'm not too sure, but I know that that's probably what it stands for. So the CPU is basically the brain of your computer. Like without a CPU, you're not gonna see any type of screen. You're not gonna see anything on your screen. Okay. It's one of the most important parts, yet probably one of the most expensive. Well, yeah. So each CPU has its own design. Like for example, I think Intel CPUs don't have pins on them, and AMD CPUs do have pins on them. And these pins are little golden pins that can actually be bent by just a simple touch. So don't touch it. Try to hold it from the sides of the CPU. Try not to hold it from the back, because if you do, you're screwed. I mean, you might be able to put the pins back into into the original position, but I don't think you would be able to do it unless you're very experienced. Now moving on to the graphics card. So the graphics card is probably nowadays the most expensive part. It's probably, yeah, it is the most expensive part about the PC, because I mean, the market today nowadays is terrible. There's RX 580s going out there for like 600, 700 when the retail price is like maybe 200 at most. So, be careful with what you buy, because please don't pay $900 for a 2060. Not even a 2060 Super. You should only be paying $900 for like a 3080 or a 30 series card. Besides a 3060. That's the most that you should be paying for like most 30 series cards. If someone's charging you like, for example, let's say the 1070 or 1070 Ti, I think that's a thing. It holds up very well in today's standards. I mean, it's able to run games fine, but there's people out there that sell them for like 800 when they're like 250, somewhere around there. So be careful with who you buy it from, because otherwise you might just get scammed and then you'll feel sad. Alright, now moving on to I don't know why I didn't do this before the graphics card, but the CPU cooler. Basically, it's a fan. It just keeps your CPU cool, and that's where you put your thermal paste on. You put it on the CPU, and then you squish it down with the CPU cooler. It basically keeps your CPU cool. Without a CPU cooler, you're fucked. You're basically screwed. Why is my PC running so loudly? Let me try and, maybe it's because I'm recording, but that's fine. I'll be getting a new PC soon anyways. That's basically a CPU cooler. Just keep your CPU cool. CPU cooler keeps your CPU cool. Now moving on to the fans, or let's move on to the fans. These are fans that you put in the case to keep everything cool. Unlike my PC, because I don't know why, but I bought it from Dell like a year ago and I completely regret it. It sucks. It really sucks. But yeah, fans keep your components cool. What are my temperatures, bro? Why? Okay. But keeps your entire case cool, so it doesn't feel like the Sahara Desert in there, or the Sahara, or whatever. Just so it doesn't feel like the Arizona Desert. Yeah, I know it feels like that in my fucking case, because I don't know why I bought this stupid fucking thing, man. So, moving on to the power supply. The power supply is what sources the power, or what gives the power to all the components that you have in your PC. Like, for example, depending on how much of a powerful graphics card and CPU you have, you might need a higher wattage power supply. Like, for example, if you have a 1650, you might just need a 550 watt, maybe 650 watt power supply. But if you have something like a 3090, you might need like an 850 watt power supply, maybe even more. But the higher the wattage goes, the more you have to pay. So 650 will cost more than 550. 750 will cost more than 650. It's just like it gets more expensive every time. And depending on who you buy it from, it'll be more expensive. Like if you buy it from EVGA, it'll be more expensive than some random off-brand power supply manufacturer. that's basically the power supply. Just gives power to all of your components. Now let's move on to the case. So the case is what you put everything in. Your motherboard, your graphics card, your CPU cooler, your RAM, your fans, just everything. Your storage, everything. I gotta move on to that actually. So it's just where you put everything. And depending on what case you get, you'll either get no airflow or a lot of airflow. So make sure you get a good case. Check in with Carter PCs or somebody. I don't know. Let's move on to storage. Now there are two types of storage that I think M.2 is just. I think M.2 is no. I think it's just okay. So I'm just gonna go with SSD and HDD. So there are two types of storage. There's SSD and HDD. And SSD is relatively faster than an HDD, and that's where I recommend you to put Windows on if you do have a second drive, because that way Windows will load quicker, and you won't have to worry about like 5 to 10 minute loading. And then, so that's basically what an SSD is. It's basically just a faster version of an HDD. The HDD is just a slower version of an SSD. But, relatively, most of the time, well, HDDs cost less than SSDs because, well, they're slower. And there's a lot of different space options, like storage options, like 1 terabyte. I'll just explain that in another video. But that's pretty much all that you'll really need to build a PC, I guess. I better stop recording because otherwise that PC's gonna explode, but, yeah.